I always knew you were a Randy Git.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, John.
Hello, John.
Well, we're on Facebook, so I better introduce us all.
Okay.
So-
All right, okay. Well, we're just coming in, so hopefully a couple more people are going to turn up.
Well,
so-
yes, and hopefully Willie make me co-host so I can let them in.
Right.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys and assembled company, welcome to World Storytelling Cafe, and it is that Sunday of the month that is our worldwide story round, hosted by the one and only Trust from Getting Word on Edgeways. Mike, can I hand the whole caboodle over to your good self?
Well, thank you very much, dearest John, and it's lovely to be in your company again. And so, is this your new place in Gloucester you're sat in?
No, I've been sick today. I can't get in it for a couple of days, but I've got the keys and everything. It's
All right.
it's a bit of a rabbit hutch, but it's fine. But it suits me.
Yeah.
But I've got to get the odd vehicle moved from outside it. It's in my parking space.
Oh, well, that's Gloucester all over, because the
Yeah,
trouble
well,
with those, you know, the trouble with Gloucester is when them Romans went and started building it, they didn't know about cars. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Everything's sorted. Everything's good.
So, are you staying around to do something this evening?
Well, I shall stay here. Whether I do anything, I'll do something.
Good.
I might have to slip out to the van and get my stuff in, but apart from that,
Okay.
so if I disappear and it becomes a blank, it's because I've gone to get some poems or something out of the van.
Right, okay. So, well, hopefully you'll do some poems, if not a story. But
I'll do something. I'll do something.
yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start, and if I'll wait a couple of minutes more, and I'll get one started. But I've been trying to think about something, John. One that might sort of. Did you know Ruth Tongue?
No, I didn't. I know her work, but obviously I didn't know her because she was sort of this end of the country, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was Somerset Crowcombe.
Yeah, because
That's
Taffy
what it
knew
was.
her. Taffy
Did you
knew her.
know her, Rona? Oh, it's a bit far north for you, is it? Well, you're a bit far north for her, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was always down south quite a lot, as you know, Mike. So yeah, I did know Ruth.
Yeah. Did you meet her?
Only once. Yeah, quite a long
Right.
time ago. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a
on
long time
Facebook.
ago for all of us,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Right. Right. So I was always going to say to you, Diana, until you just admitted to being a grandmother, I was going to say she was well dead before you got to be 30. So. I must admit, you quite surprised me when you said that you were a grandmother. I really didn't think you'd be that old. So you must have started when you were really young as well, I think, wasn't you?
And she's got 3 grandchildren, not just
Yeah,
one.
you're on mute, so you can't be rude to me back. So that's okay.
Yeah, the eldest is 7, and then I've got a 3-year-old and then a baby. But I just
Oh.
love all the playing down on the carpet with them, and you know, all the different things that they enjoy, and painting and all that stuff with kids. I just love. So
Me too.
So are you? So I can ask you both. And are you a nana or a grandma, or
I'm a Scottish granny.
you're Scottish granny? Okay.
And
And
I'm
what are you?
Scottish
Ron?
granny.
You're
All
Scottish
right.
granny.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm Scottish, and my daughters are Scottish, and my grandkids are half Scottish. So, but they all live near me in Altrincham. None of us live in Scotland. We all live in England.
Does any of you fellas? Do you have anybody who plays the bagpipes in your families?
My daughter started to learn at school, and she made such the most god-awful racket that my neighbours complained about it. But the problem, I wouldn't have cared. I would have just said, carry on complaining. My daughter's learning the bagpipes and that's it. But unfortunately, they said she didn't have enough lung power. She wasn't strong enough. Very few girls play the bagpipes because it is a difficult instrument to play. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What
One of my
about you?
I
Dan?
did for a wee while, but he's been dead for a long time now, my oldest brother, but he did for a wee while too.
All right. Okay.
none of my family play the bagpipes, but I know certain people, and like we had a babysitter that played the bagpipes. But I did notice a big change. I grew up in a small village called Kintore, and when I was young, people would always be playing the bagpipes in their garden because they had to rehearse the tunes for that weekend or whatever. And everybody was really tolerant of it. But as you know, now, as you know, I'm a granny, I think it's quite different. People are not so wanting to put up with extraneous noise. They don't really see well, they don't view it the same. I think it was more of a community thing before, but
Right.
it's always, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's there's a farmer down. I live in the actual official name for where I live is called the Apedale. And years ago, one of the farms was bought out by Johnny Campbell, who comes from the Highlands somewhere, and his family moved and bought it out. And you can hear him play the pipe sometimes first thing in the morning. And he's a couple of miles away. But he would get up, and just as they were milking the cows, or if he wasn't milking, he'd practice his pipe sometimes. And he always thought that no one could hear him. And it didn't come up for years, and we were sat round, and someone said, "We haven't heard you play the pipes." And he said, "Well, I didn't know anybody else could hear. I lived sort of miles away from anybody else, and we could all hear, but nobody minded, because it was just part of the part of living where we do that sometimes." And the other really nice noise you can hear sometimes here is when the school has break. And the school's about a mile away, and it's the school that my kids went to. And I can remember sitting and listening, and when you could hear a bell in the summer, and then you could hear the laughter of the kids. And the laughter of the kids at break is one of the nicest sounds you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
It is just lovely. It really is. And that was another one that it still happens from time to time, but I think they tell the kids not to make too much noise or something.
It's ridiculous.
You know, it seems a bit right. So there seems to be only the four of us. If Wallad he's left it on, but I've been to the storytelling cafe, so he's probably downstairs or something. So I'm going to start. I was talking about Ruth Tongue earlier, so I'm going to start off with this one. And then I'll go to you, Rona, and then I'll go to you, Diana, and then John can finish, and then we'll all finish for tonight. I don't think we're having one in August, and then September and October are all tied into the festivals and everything else. So just keep an eye out for the dates. But there we go. So
because the festival's on as well at the moment, Mike.
Yeah, the Fate. Well, Fate should be finishing.
Yeah.
Should have finished an hour ago.
Yeah.
We had a real rainstorm last night, and I just hope it went well.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that nobody got washed out. Today hasn't been too bad. It's been showery, but on the whole, it was quite warm this morning to give everybody a chance to get out their tents and stuff. So just cross our fingers. I haven't heard anything's gone badly wrong. So right. Not so long ago, actually, but it could have been a long time ago, but I don't think it was that far ago, really. There was an old lady, and she lived just under the Quantock Hills in Somerset. But it was the middle of the night when she woke up, and she lived there by herself. Her husband had died, and her children had found a happiness in other homes, because she had two daughters. And they'd found happiness in other homes, and there they'd stayed and had their children. And so the old lady, as we were talking a moment ago, the three of us, but she was a grandma, and she'd had some children, but she woke up, and it was in the middle of the night, and she looked round and she thought, well, maybe it's daytime somewhere. It looks light. It was the summertime. It could almost be light. I think I'll go for a walk. I've got to go round to the local town anyway, to the market. So she picked up some eggs, and she picked up some bits and pieces she was going to sell from her garden, but she knew a few about herbs. So some of it was feverfew, and people that, the one thing this time of year is from when you get a wasp sting. And she always had a bit of vinegar, because if you get a wasp sting, you would put a bit of vinegar on it, and that sucks out the skin for the kids. Takes the sting away, they call it. That's what they say down in those parts anyway. So she had her bits and pieces, and she walked up to the top of the Quantocks. And there she could see over to the sea and the mist, but it was still nighttime, really. But it was a light nighttime, if you know what I mean. There was no moon particularly. But then all of a sudden, coming flashing past, was a something with two tall ears and long legs and dipping backwards and forwards. And it was a hare, and it was a female hare. And she looked at it and had fear in her eyes. And she picked up this hare as it stopped, and she shoved it straight into her basket, and she covered it over and said, "You just stay there with me." For in this instant, for in the distance, she'd heard the horn of the hunters. And the horn of the hunters was there. And then they came closer, and they came closer, but she stood there and she went to a full height of 4 foot, 11 inches and a quarter. And she sat there with her basket, and this great big horseman came running up, and the horse, he leapt up on his back legs, and there was steam coming out of his nostrils, and it just looked like one of those old dragons. And it came flopping down, so its front paws hit the ground at once. And it was a great big stallion, and the ground shook a little bit. But she stood there, and she looked up, and there were some great big red eyes staring down at her. And all around her were these great big hounds with slavering tongues and sort of tears coming out of their eyes, and all sort of growling at her. But she stood her ground, but the cold fear, the ice of fear came into her heart. And she stood there, because as she looked up at the huntsman, there seemed to be horns coming out of its head. And he looked down, and the hooves of the horse were nearly the same as the cloven hooves that were in the stirrups. And she looked at one to the other, and she looked back again, and she knew she was facing the old Nick himself, the devil himself. And he turned around and he looked at her and said, "There was a hare. I've been chasing that hare for years. I want that hare. Has it come this way?" And she looked up, and she looked round, but suddenly something came from inside her. It came from under her feet, and it came bubbling up. And she said these words. There was one that came past. It went that way. And the huntsman, he looked down, he looked into her eyes, and she stood up, and she looked back up into his eyes, and she held the stare. She held it rock solid through her brown eyes. But somehow it came into her eyes, but something came up through the ground, and around her heart it met. But her heart stayed steady, and she stared right back. And the back rose straightened, and she said, "You're calling me a liar?" And old Nick looked down and he went, "I've been looking for that hare for years, for decades, for centuries. If I find that you get in my way, there'll be consequences." And she looked back when she said, "Went that way." And off he went with the hounds of hell and the black boots that he wore where the toes were cut out, so you could see the cloven hooves on his big black stallion, and his cloak that went flashing back, and the horns that came out of his head, and just a little bit of a tail that came up from the back of his cloak. And she took a great big breath, and she sat down. Then she opened up a basket, but the hare wasn't there. The hare had gone. All there was the eggs that she had and the few herbs she was going to try and sell. And suddenly she looked behind her. And behind her she looked, at this instant would have been the east. And she looked there, and there in front of her was a will-o'-the-wisp, as they call it, a will-o'-the-wisp down in Somerset. That's where you can see something, but not quite. It's something that's made out of mist or smoke or something that's almost transparent. It doesn't quite touch the ground. It doesn't try to touch the sky, and you can see through it and you can't see through it. And the will-o'-the-wisp turned round to the old lady and said, "Thank you for that. For if it wasn't for I, there would be no more mornings. For my name is Dawn, and I have to go and do my work now. And he tries to hunt me down, but somehow I always seem to avoid it. Thank you for that, old lady. And she leant over, and just for a moment, as the hand came from the will of the whisk, it just touched her shoulder, and something like a stardust came into her hand. And she turned. As she turned, she went towards the east, and she went, and she faded, and she faded, and she faded, and just at the moment that she faded completely out of the way, the sun popped up, and dawn had come on that day. Well, the old lady, after she recovered herself, she went down to the market, and she had a good day. She was lucky. People said she seemed to be touched by luck. Everything was sold for a good price, and the eggs went. And she went back to her little cottage, and there was more cream in the milk, and all the plants, they prospered, and the hens laid everything, and the pig looked good, and everything was fine for the whole year. But every morning she got up, and she made a point of going, when she could, to the top of the contops, or just as you do on a day-by-day basis, being there for when the dawn came. And every day that year, they say, just on the left shoulder, as she was touched, it would tingle on the moment of the dawn. And they say to this day in the village of Crocombe, which is underneath the Quantocks, down not far from the sea, down by Watchet, it's between Taunton and Watchet. And I go there from time to time. And it's a beautiful village, and it's full of beautiful people, and the cider. Well, I won't tell you about the cider, because I could be here all night telling you about the cider, but it's very, very nearly as good as the stuff that they make in Herefordshire. But you've got to keep drinking both to make sure that the Hereford stuff is slightly better than the Somerset stuff. But the one thing they say about it every year is in that year, the word went round, and when her eggs came for sale, her eggs were double the price of everybody else's, because people used to break the egg, and as they put it into the frying pan to fry it, the yolk always reminded them of the sun of the dawn in the morning.
Oh, that was beautiful, Mike.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really lovely story.
Oh, that's a big tongue story, John. Yeah, that's one of Ruthie's stories, that one. And Crocombe is the village that she lives in, that was there. And she had a little cottage up in the woods, and it had no running water and no electric, or, you know, she had candles and stuff like that. But she did have a garden. And what she didn't know about the healing plants, John, you didn't really want to know. But the other thing she loved was wriggles. And there's an awful lot of wriggles. I don't know if you fellas know the wriggles, but I've probably done this one before. Hello, Despina. I said, have you got a suntan down by you? Because it's been hot enough for the last couple of weeks. You should have been out there sunbathing on the beach or something. Anyways, here I think I've said this one to you before, John. I don't know if I've said it to some of the others. And Sue down in South Africa, here's one for you. You might like this. What has a river with no water, a forest with no trees, a town with no people, and a farm with no crops, with no cattle, and no horses? I'll let you all have a think about that while we go on. I'll just remind me to tell you at the end, whatever it is. Okay. If you know it already, put your hand up. Oh, none of you. Oh, right. Okay. I thought you didn't know. You're going to use this all the way to school. Kids love this, right? Okay.
Could you say one more time, Mike, please?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Now then, Baden. Yes, you did say hello. Yes, I know you're there. Right. So this is how it goes, Baden. What has a river with no water, a forest with no trees, a town with no people, and farms with no crops or cattle or horses to do the work? But it's an old one, so you can say tractors to do the work nowadays if you want to. That's right. So whoever's put that up, that's right. Okay, someone's messaged me with the right answer. Okay. So, okay, well, I'll tell you what. The answer's a map. Okay. So when you look at a map, you think about what you see, and that's what it's telling you. Okay. So the answer's a map. Okay. All right.
Very
Right. Mona,
Thank you.
can you all mute yourself, please? If you're not on, I'll just mute my.
Thank you, Mike. I loved your story, and I don't know whether I'd heard that before, but it just came into my mind that it was a map. I think my grandson might have told me that actually. He probably heard it in school. Anyway, I'd like to tell you about a king, and he wasn't just any king. He was spectacular in just about every possible way. And he was also a tad cruel, it has to be said, because if anybody committed a crime in his kingdom, the punishment was death by execution. And that execution was carried out by the axeman, who, it was said, actually enjoyed his job. So you know the kind of people that we're dealing with here. And the king, in one particular morning, had agreed that this man would be executed because he had stolen some bread to feed his wife and family. And his wife and he, the queen and he, were discussing it over breakfast. And she says, you know, my dear, I think you have to give this some serious thought, because this is a very intelligent man. And you have just lost your chief advisor, who had died the previous week. You really should think about this. It would be a dreadful waste of such an intelligent mind. Now, the king had never in his entire time as king taken back an execution. Everybody who was deemed for execution got their head chopped off. And he didn't like the idea of changing his mind. He didn't want the people to think he had weakened in any way whatsoever. But at the same time, his wife could be right, you know, it might be rather foolish to do away with somebody that could be very, very useful to him. So, and his wife could see that he was pondering over it. So she said to him, why don't you give it a little bit more thought before you finally decide? And of course, there was only half an hour to go, and the whole town was out. I mean, this was back in the days when an execution was treated as something like a festival. The whole family would turn up. They would have a picnic, the children, everybody, and they would cheer when the execution took place. It was quite bizarre and quite, you know, not very pleasant. But on this particular day, the crowd were there, they were all waiting and they were anticipating this execution, and the children were all playing the usual games and the adults were all chatting away, and the executioner was standing there with his arms folded and his axe in his right hand, swinging it, just casually swinging his axe. And then when the king and the queen made their appearance in the gallery and looked over and saw the man waiting to be executed, and his family in front of him, watching it, the queen shuddered. She had never liked these things. They'd always left a bad taste for her, but she could not, you know, go against her husband. But she hoped he had listened to her on that particular morning, and he had, because the first words out of his mouth when he stepped out onto the gallery, before he even sat down, he looked across at the man and he said, so, I hear you're quite a clever man then. And the man, quite taken aback, said, oh, well, I don't know about that, Your Majesty. That's not for me to say. But perhaps you would like to test me. And the queen smiled. Oh, this was a clever man, indeed. And the king said, test you? Oh, yes, I could give you a quest. I will give you a quest, and if you defeat the quest and you win, then you shall have your freedom. And the executioner's face was a picture. He was absolutely furious, even at the thought that this man might escape his axe. And he wouldn't get paid. Oh no, the very thought of it, he was fuming. But the king ordered one of the young guards by his side to go and find some chalk. And the crowd by this time were all looking at each other. Is this, what's going on here? Is there not going to be an execution today? What's happening? This can't be right. Even the children looked a bit glum. Oh, it's not happening. Oh. And then the king knelt on the ground and people were clamoring, climbing over each other to see what was going on. This was unheard of. The king was on his knees in front of this man. Of course, they couldn't hear what was going on, and the word was getting passed back, and the good old Chinese whispers was getting carried on. And nobody had a clue what was happening, certainly not at the back. And the king drew a line, a chalk line on the stone. And then he stood up and he said to the man, if you can make that line shorter, then you shall have your freedom. But you are not allowed to use any part of your body, any part of your being to do so. And the man looked at the chalk line that was freshly drawn, and it was quite powdery. And he thought, if I blow on that powder, some of it will go and the line will be shorter. But hold on. My breath, is that part of me? Is that part of my being? Yes, of course it is. I could cast a shadow over it and make it shorter. But I'm not really making it shorter. I'm just making one part of it less visible, but it's still there. And he ruminated for a few minutes more, and then suddenly, whoop, the light bulb came on. Your Majesty, may I have the chalk? And the people were like, what on earth is going on here? And the king handed him the chalk. And the queen smiled because she knew that this man was clever enough to win this quest. And now the man knelt down in front of the king. And the people were clamoring to see what was happening and what was going on. But only those at the very front could see. And the man drew a line alongside the king's, but he made it a little bit longer. And he turned to the king and he said, I'm sure you must agree, Your Majesty, that by drawing a line that was longer than yours, I've made yours shorter. Well, the king was actually quite pleased that he'd got it right, because now he could, in all honesty, give that man his freedom because he deserved it. They had made a bargain and he had won. And the man's wife was delighted, and his children, they were clamoring round him and grabbing his legs and hugging him. And everybody in the crowd was cheering, but they didn't know why they were cheering. They didn't quite know yet until they looked up and saw the executioner. And at that point, the king was saying to the man, you may not only have your freedom, but you shall be my new chief advisor, and you shall come and live in the palace, of course, with your wife and family. Well, that was fantastic. Everybody was cheering again and clapping. Everybody was happy. Everybody was smiling, except the executioner, who looked decidedly miffed.
So when Robin Hood came to visit Much Wenlock, they had a competition to do with the archery. And a little 11-year-old little girl stood up and said, I'm a better archer than you are, Robin Hood. And she said, I bet you a golden guinea. And Robin Hood looked at her and he went, I'll take the bet. And they painted a roundel on the church door. And Robin Hood picked it up and he pulled the bow and it hit the gold in the middle of the roundel and the target on the church door. And she said, that's how good I am. And the little girl, she picked up her little bow, which was half the size of Robin's, and she went up 3 and there was another wooden door. And she picked up her bow and she fired the arrow straight into the wooden door. Then she picked up her paints and she painted the target round the outside of it. And hers was bang in the middle. And she said, I'm a better archer than you are, Robin Hood, because my arrow's more in the middle of the target than yours is. And Robin Hood paid the golden guinea. They do say on the way home in Staffordshire he stole 2 more to make up for it, but that was beside the point. They came from the rich people. Okay. Talking about riddle stories, we've got lots of those one way or another. Diana from the north of Scotland, where Stanley Robinson said all the women were beautiful because it came from their hearts and not from anywhere else.
Yeah, well, the story I've got today is from the Highlands, actually. And it's a very long time ago when the world was quite a different place. And on the one hand, there was a young queen. A queen that had been advised so much when she was growing up. It had been hard for her to forge her own identity. She was a beautiful young queen, and she'd had sadness. She'd had to leave Scotland when she was 5 years old, and she stayed in France all that time. And oh yes, she was part of Henry II's family. That was her father-in-law. And she was betrothed to Francis II. Well, of course, I'm talking about Mary Queen of Scots. And at the time of this story, it's 1561, and her husband, Francis, has died. And her mother died, Marie de Guise, in 1562, and her father-in-law, and these were people that were dear to her. And it had been so difficult for her growing up in the midst of all these people men really, that felt they knew better. And she was keen to forge her own identity, to be her own person. And she came from France to Scotland, and she docked at Leith, just in Edinburgh. And of course, there was a great furore and a great reception. And the Earl of Huntly was there. Now, the Earl of Huntly, some people thought he was just a bit too big for his boots. He'd been in power circles for 30 years. He had a strong background. He had royal connections. He was the grandson of James IV. He was a playmate of James V, who was Mary Queen of Scots' father. This man owned lots of land, and he was so prestigious. He'd taken part in the Battle of Haddon Rig, and he'd been so he'd won so convincingly. He'd been caught at the Battle of Pinkie and eventually had escaped. But this man was quite a very prominent figure at that time, and nobody doubted his power or his willingness to use that power to his own advantage. Many people thought that he was just looking out for number one, or else for the Gordon clan. Well, like I say, Mary Queen came to Scotland, and she did want to have her own identity, and she did meet Earl of Huntly quite early on, but she'd heard various stories about him, and she wasn't really sure what to make of him, and she wasn't really sure if he was trustworthy. I mean, at one point, her mother, Mary de Guise, had gone out many times to Huntly Castle and been entertained lavishly, and she'd put a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, but many felt, and in time Marie de Guise felt, that the only thing he was wanting was really more kudos for himself. And what kind of man was this to deal with her in the future? But anyway, his reign and his connections with all the people in the north of Scotland, he was called the Cock of the North because he was such a strong figure. And everybody knew the 4th Earl of Huntly, George Gordon, and all his lands and everything that the clan did. And the castle itself was quite wonderful, with so many different lavish furnishings inside, and entertainment was always of the highest order. Now, it came to the point that there was quite a lot of unrest between the Catholics and the Protestants. And of course, Mary Queen of Scots was Catholic. So you might think that because the Earl of Huntly was also Catholic and had his own chapel as part of his castle, that would work well together. But she was quite skeptical of him, and she didn't want to do anything risky. And all this was new to her. And she was only in 1562, she was 20 years old. and he was a lot older. He was 50 odd. Well, she also knew her brother, their half-brother, Lord James, was quite prominent in her life at that time. And his view was, well, you can still be Catholic, Mary, yourself, and have your own private religion, but that doesn't mean to say that you can ignore the Protestants, because there was so much of an uprising in favour of Protestantism. And really, Mary didn't want to rock the boat that much. She'd seen what all the religious wars had done in France, and she didn't want that all over again as soon as she stepped on Scottish soil. So Mary thought about it. On the one hand, she was offered the Earl of Huntly and all these men to help her make the North Catholic. And on the other hand, she was free to make up her own mind whether to let the Protestants have some hold at least, because Lord James, her half-brother, he was Protestant. And he said, yes, she could have her own faith. And in the end, she decided in favour of her half-brother, which infuriated the Earl of Huntly. He felt that he was so senior, he should have been paid attention to, and she shouldn't have just gone with her half-brother. But anyway, after that, she decided that she would make her half-brother, Lord James, the Earl of Moray. And this was a very prestigious title. This was one that wasn't just given to anyone. This was one that was given as a real matter of importance. This would let people know that the Queen had a lot of faith in this person. And yet, the Earl of Huntly knew all about Murrayshire. He knew all the people, his great involvement there. He felt totally traumatized when he found out that it was Lord James that was going to head things up there. I wonder why Mary did that. Well, anyway, things got a bit ruffled between the two of them after that. And when the Queen went north on a visit in the Highlands, she left Aberdeen and she did think about going to Huntly. At that time, it was called Strathbogie Castle, but she wasn't sure about it because it was hadn't long been announced that the Earl of Moray was going to be Lord James. And she wasn't sure just exactly how things would go. She decided not to. She went on to Inverness. Now, Inverness came under the Earl of Huntly's jurisdiction, but it wasn't actually his castle. It was a royal castle. And when the Queen went to enter Inverness Castle, she was refused. She was the Queen of Scotland, and she was refused entry to one of the royal castles. This was not good news. She couldn't let this pass. She had to let them know. Now, Alexander Gordon was one of the 4th Earl of Huntly's sons, and he was captain of the guard. And he was the one that ultimately refused her. And of course, the association, his head was chopped off. And not just his, there were others as well. But the Queen, she had to deal with treason. She had to deal with hard things. She wasn't going to run away from them. She was going to face them squarely and let these guys see just what they were up against. And then she stayed on Inverness Castle, and she loved the Highlands. She went on stag hunts. She really wanted to be sleeping out in the open, like you'd seen so many of the Highlanders do. But that wasn't allowed for a queen. And she loved all the plaids, all the tartans. She even dressed in Highland regalia herself. And she seemed sort of so relaxed that Randolph, her messenger, was quite surprised in the transformation of her in the time that she was there. And then she went off to Darnaway Castle, where Lord James was stayed. And then she went back to Aberdeen. Now, there was also this whole problem of John Gordon. John Gordon was the 4th Earl of Huntly's other son. Well, he actually had 9 sons and 3 daughters. Now, John Gordon was quite a rogue, really. Very good looking, very handsome. All the ladies would fall at his feet, but he was quite mercurial, really. He wanted his own way, and in this particular instance, with one particular lady who used to be married to Alexander Ogilvy, when Alexander Ogilvy died, he married her, and he ended up inheriting all the wealth of Alexander Ogilvy, despite the fact that this Ogilvy man had many sons. And this just would not seem fair. And in Edinburgh one day, John Gordon and one of the Ogilvies, James, met up, and there was a great fight, and John Gordon was thrown into prison. But John Gordon, being John Gordon, wasn't going to stay there. He was restless, and he managed to make his escape. But the Queen wanted him back there, and it was a matter of honour that he went back there. And she even got the say-so of the Earl of Huntly and his wife, Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth, his wife, she was considered to be the brains behind Huntly. She was better educated. She was quite subtle. She could come over all charming. And she was often sent to try and piece things over, maybe when the Earl of Huntly had overstepped the mark. But in this particular case, it didn't matter what the Countess of Huntly, Elizabeth, said, or what the fourth Earl said. John Gordon was a hard man to put down, and he kept escaping. And he went off to some of his father's lands. There were so many castles round about. And this caused a deep rift between Mary and the Earl of Huntly. And there was quite a lot of mistrust there. And she really didn't know what to make of him, but she was very much on the sceptical side. And of course, she had more of the ear of Lord James, who was Protestant. Well, there was also the cannon. There was a cannon right in front of Strathbogie Castle. How impudent was that? And apparently it belonged to the Queen. And why was it still there? And of course, she asked for it to be removed. Well, the Earl of Huntly and his wife, they hid it. They dismantled it and hid it. And when two men from the Queen came and tried to find this cannon, well, they couldn't find it anywhere, and they couldn't find the Earl of Huntly, who had taken off because he'd been forewarned that there were men coming. He'd taken off on his horse with no shoes on his own feet, and he went off as fast as he could. And things now were beginning to hot up. And there was word of forces on both sides. So after that, Strathbogie was rifled, the Strathbogie Castle. And the Queen also put out a vanguard. She put out a vanguard to try and suss out what Earl of Huntly might be up to. And she was able to find out quite a lot. But many of that vanguard did not come back. However, by this time, Lord James and his 2,000 professionals behind him, well trained and well ordered, were ready. And the Earl of Huntly? Well, they say 700 men at the most. And they followed him, but they said that on the way from Strathbogie and Huntly up to Aberdeen and beyond to the Hill of Fare, where this whole battle took place, that many strayed away. And of course, there was all the propaganda on the other side too. And who wanted to get on the wrong side of the Queen this early on in her reign? So the battle came, and it was on marshy land on the Hill of Fare. And the Earl of Huntly's men were not so able to withstand this marshy land. And also, they were of the opinion it was going to be a sword fight, because they'd used swords against many of the vanguard, and they'd been successful. But this was no time for swords. This was the time when Lord James' men had pikes, long-handled pikes with a long reach. And if you were stuck in that marshy mud, your end was nigh. And there were so many of them, they could group all around. It was the Battle of Carrichie. There's a burn that runs past called Carrichie. And this is where the Earl of Gordon, the 4th Earl of Huntly, George Gordon, fell. But the thing was, he wasn't a casualty of battle. It was heart failure or a stroke that was the cause of his death. And it was a bit strange. You would expect that it would be a casualty of battle. But then there'd also been this prophecy of witches, prophecy that said, and he believed that he was going to die at Crichi. Now, Crichi is different to Corrichie. Crichi is an area of Inverurie, and on the way from Huntly, from Strathbogie, you pass Crichi. And he'd always been worried about that because of this prophecy that he was going to die there. But actually, it was Corrichie. But die he did. And there were still many people, many professionals on Lord James' side that were totally uninjured. But after that, he was taken to Edinburgh. His dead body was taken to Edinburgh, and he was tried for treason. And so was his son, John Gordon. And John Gordon was executed. But do you know, this was all in 1562. In 1565, only 3 years later, there is a new Earl of Huntly, and it's the 5th Earl of Huntly, and it's the 4th Earl of Huntly's son, and his name is also George. And he was imprisoned for quite some time and then in exile. But now, in 1565, he is given back the lands that his father used to own and all his possessions, and you just begin to wonder to yourself, why does history keep on repeating itself over and over and over again? Thank you.
Well, that's lovely, Diana, and I've never heard that before. It's lovely. I love these medieval history stories. I have one question for you. I've actually made a note of it today because I play a tune and it's called the Cock of the North. And we know it as a Highland tune. And the military play it a lot because it's a good marching tune. When you called him the Cock of the North, now he was, give me his official, can you remember his title, his official title?
He was the 4th Earl of Huntly, and he was 4th Earl. There's quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
And he was
and his
George Gordon.
Yeah, so his colours would be the Gordons.
Yes, their motto is steadfast, but well, Bidand, which means steadfast, and it's got antlers and something else I can't remember.
Would the Gordons, is their tartan black sometimes? Is that the Black Watch?
I'm not sure actually. I have been trying to contact, there's a local museum called the Gordon Highlanders Museum, and I'm sure it's part and parcel of the same thing, but I haven't been able to get an answer from them.
Sorry about that. Excuse me, everybody else. This really interests me. I love bits and pieces.
I'll try and find out.
Well, yes, I'd love to know. Actually, that's lovely. Right. So the Cock of the North, the 4th Earl of Huntly.
Yeah.
I'll find more about that, I tell you. Despina, lovely to be in your company again. How are you?
Suffering from the heat wave, but fine otherwise.
Right, well, I've got something that's going to amuse you. Some friends, we've got some cousins that live in Texas, and they're sort of 3rd or 4th cousins once removed, and they've come and found us just this summer. And now they're living just in Spain. It's the bit below Portugal by Gibraltar. They're living there.
Mm-hmm.
So I texted them, I put it on WhatsApp and said, how are you getting on in the heat? Because I see it's over the 40s there. It's 42, 43.
It's the same here. Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah.
Do you know what their answer was? We come from Texas. We think this is cold.
Well, I met David Thompson the other day, and he said that the heat wave was sent from him, from Texas, to us with love.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yeah. So in Texas, it gets even hotter by all accounts. Now, I knew an Apache Indian. I'll think of her just now. I'll think of her first name. I'm going to text her and ask her. Anyway, Despina, what have you got for us this evening?
Well, I've got a personal tale, Mike, which I do not usually tell, but I have turned it into a fairy tale version. So here it goes. It was 2005 when I returned to my hometown. I had been a lab migrant up in the north for 2 years, tangled in a love-and-hate relationship with a man far more interested in listening to himself, beating his drums and blowing his own trumpet, and he wasn't building solid rapport with women in his life when I finally gathered the strength to leave. So back home I was, feeling my wings a little clipped. But here I found a good friend I had left behind who was in a very similar situation, and we decided to share a house. And a little while later, another friend joined us who was having trouble finding a place and living on her own. And we experienced the so-called women's solidarity. We were all working in the same house of fortune for the lucky ones back then. So we had enough money to provide for food, clothing, and extra to cover travels and pleasure. So it was in 2007, when I least expected it or even cared about it, that I met a boy. For even if he had been working like a man for years, time dictated that that was what he was. But then my father got sick, and we took him from doctor to doctor, but no doctor could cure him. His health just deteriorated, and finally we'd have to take him to the doctor every day. Now, during this hard time, the boy never left my side. So I came to realize that he was less of a boy and more of a man that I had initially taken him to be. Sadly, my dad was gone a few months later. We buried him at Easter of 2009. But the man boy stayed, and that man boy that had now been elevated to my eyes became my husband at Christmas 2009. Earlier than that, I had had the good fortune of changing profession, and I had become a brain trainer for little people, which turned out to be exactly what I wanted. So, engaging myself in this occupation, I realized how much I appreciated little people and how much I would like to have one of my own. My husband said he felt the same, so we started praying for a child. But time passed and no child would come. Our dogs came into our lives and they were good comfort, but alas, no child. Now it was my turn to visit the witch doctor. The witch doctor asked me this and that, and he did this and that, and he danced around me this way and that. But later on, while I was sewing a shirt, I pricked my finger. A drop of blood came out and fell in my cup of coffee, and I thought, oh, if only I had a child that would have skin the color of my milky coffee. A new visit to the witch doctor was due. He checked this and that, and then he jumped this way and that, and chanted ancient hymns. But later that month, as I was embroidering a sheet, my cat coiled at my feet, I pricked my finger, and a drop of blood fell on her head. She turned and looked at me intensely and walked away. The only thing I could think of was, oh, if only I had a child with cat-like eyes. Once more, I had to visit the witch doctor. He tried this potion and that, and he applied this ointment and that, and he raised his bellowing voice to the skies. But later, while I was weaving on the loom, eating dark chocolates to help fight depression, a bad idea, do not weave on the loom and eat chocolate at the same time. A splinter pricked my finger, and a drop of blood fell on my piece of chocolate. And the only thing I could think of was, oh, if I had a child with dark, dark hair like this bar of chocolate. Time came and time went. And the witch doctor kept asking me when my next visit would be. But by this time I was feeling so disheartened, I decided it was probably time to talk to the wise woman. She heard my troubles, fully understood, although a bit ironically about the well of sadness I had placed myself in, gave me some sound advice to take a break and bide my time, and I took it to heart. So there I was with my husband, taking time off and traveling together. We tried frog legs at the village fair, and we rowed our boat in a fast-flowing river. But my personal favorite, the one that lifted my spirits, was flying high up in the sky with the dragons. Up on the mountain we went with the other crazy folk. The dragons were waiting there patiently, breathing deeply and testing their wingspan. When everything was ready, we were tied on 2 separate dragon riders, and off we were, high up in the air and into the wind currents. The dragons were gentle and the riders were experienced, but no one had prepared me for the cold up there. I felt as if I was in a snowstorm and that soon the tip of my nose and my fingers would freeze and fall off. Overcoming a slight sense of vertigo as we were going round and round into the whirlwind, I regained control of my mind and finally started enjoying the ride. Nothing mattered. The cold didn't matter. The spinning didn't matter. All my troubles were so far below me now. After a good while, we started descending, and inexperienced as I was, the landing was a bit rough, but nothing serious. The sense of flying high and the adrenaline rush kept for a good while. Our trip was over a little later, and we were back home. Now, when I felt ready, I called the witch doctor and told him to prepare his remedies for one last try. And believe it or not, that time, his witchcraft worked. Soon I was with child. And even though I had been trying to convince myself by saying it out loud that I did not care about genders, in my heart of hearts, I knew I wanted a daughter. And the daughter it was that I had a couple of months later in 2014. And have you guessed already? Her skin was the color of milky coffee, and her hair was the color of dark chocolate. And she looked at me with those tiny, cat-like eyes of hers, and I was the happiest woman in the whole world. So we have been living with Persephone and her dad ever since, and although the path is not always smooth, we manage well enough. But Perseus' adventures are a story for another day. What I can tell you now is that after her birth, my husband and I have lived happily ever after. And as a wise friend of a wise friend alerted me, if you believe that, you probably haven't been married yet.
Yes, but I would add on to that, Despina, with you and your husband and your daughter Persephone. Today is the first day of the rest of your lives. So look forward with happiness, and don't, everybody has rocks in the middle of the road, but looking forward, and the farther you go back, the further you can go forward.
Absolutely.
Despina.
Yes, Mike, I
Despina.
agree. Yes, Baden.
Yeah.
Basically, what you're saying to us is that you've had 3 pricks in you.
Oh, uncountable
And
ones,
then-
Baden, but yes.
And then you went for a high ride with your man and got pregnant. And you've now happily delivered a baby, and you're all very happy.
That's a pretty good translation, interpretation, I'd say.
I'd-
Yeah.
Do you
I'm
understand?
just checking.
Despina,
Just checking.
Despina,
Just checking.
Despina, we're all adults here, but Despina, do you understand the word play on the word prick that he was using?
Let's
It's an
just say that
Anglo-Saxon.
are we talking about an unpleasant person?
Well, no, that's another
No,
name.
that's another
Oh.
meaning to it.
Oh, then
The
I
other
didn't get
meaning
it
to it
right.
It's the bit that Bane's got hanging between his legs.
Oh, stop it.
So I was right to mention the uncountable
Yeah.
factor there in that case.
You know what they,
Yes.
Do
you
we mean
know,
the prick of the north?
Yeah.
Despina, do you know what they call that useless piece of skin?
I
A
don't.
man's body? A man.
Oh, right.
Now, can I tell you folks?
As
I've met
it
Despina's
is
daughter.
different time zones around the world, it's keep it
Yeah,
family
yeah.
friendly.
Can I tell you, I've met Despina's daughter and she is absolutely stunning. She was worth waiting for, Despina. She's a beautiful child.
Thank
Well, I'm
you.
rather hoping she'll be over. Despina's coming over to England in October to be part of the festival. I don't know. We haven't talked about daughters yet and whether she can come or not or anything else.
She
I
cannot
would
miss a
love
week of
to meet.
school.
Well, I can write a letter saying that it's educational.
Let
That's what directors of
thank you.
me
festivals
think about
do.
it.
Directors of festivals have a big power. It's like being a wizard sometimes. I've written 3 of those in my life. The last one was to a little lady in the Punjab that John knows.
Yes.
Thank you, Despina. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Despina. It's a lovely story. It's a very American type story, but it's a lovely story. It really was, and I enjoyed it. Right, so Baden, as we glimpsed you for a moment, are you actually going to tell a story? You're just listening tonight.
I'm good for one. I'm good for one if
Absolutely,
you
love
want
for you.
one.
So I'll put Mr. Rowe on first, and then would you do something after? And then we end up in South Africa. And Sue, I know you do sometimes, but on the whole, you prefer to listen. So it's up to you, my friend. It's lovely to see you
I've
again.
done
I haven't
something
seen
on my
you for a
phone.
while.
Okay. Hold you hard, everyone. Oh God. Right. Ah, that's it. Right. I was having just problems, but I've got them sorted. So, did you want a couple of poems then, Mike?
Absolutely, I love your poems.
Right. I had it all lined up just now, but nothing works. Here we go. I think I've done this one before, but it's for it always interests me that people use snowflake as an insult. So proud to be a snowflake, unique, an intricate part of the whole, forever changing. I'm reborn over and over. Tread on me and I'll stick to the sole of your boot and become a puddle inside your house. Sweep me and my friends away. My close ally, the wind, will pile us up further down the road. Attack us with heat. We'll rise up and wait for months to fall on you. I'm proud to be a snowflake. Knowing people dream of me coming like Papa Noel at Christmas. Ironic, isn't it, that pale supremacists fling it at us as an insult. And,
I've
now-
been called snowflake a couple of times, and I agree with you, John. I've just had to go back at him.
right now, that's what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to do one for Despina. Right. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Throwaway. This is for your heat wave. It's a throwaway line in the throwaway book. It's a throwaway smile. It's a throwaway look. It's a throwaway carton. It's a throwaway plate. It's a throwaway country. It's a throwaway state. It's a throwaway bike. It's a throwaway car. It's a throwaway sun. It's a throwaway star. It's a supernova happening before our eyes. It's the apocalypse with sci-fi skies, with fire and ice and acid rain. There's all to lose and not to gain. And I'm going to finish on One of the, you at the beginning we were talking about children being asked to keep quiet, which people being afraid of children's exuberances. This is called free range. Free-ranging children, free-ranging heads, neither species flourishes. Just like free-ranging children, free-ranging hens, neither species flourishes locked up in pens. Barns without daylight, schools without fields. You can say you can't slave the flavour of what freedom yields when a timetable specifies when chickens should land or children sit at desks for most of the day. It's a foul situation down on the farm. Likewise, academies, privatised palms, being greased by ideologues running the money uphill, training the next generation to keep quiet and keep still.
Oh, lovely, John. So did you write those recently, or are they going back a bit?
They're sort of in the last, you know, they're within living memory. And what I've been doing, I've been going through old notebooks and editing down. And I was till the festival season putting one a day up on Facebook. So that just to just sort of get a collection together, but it was a discipline. So I'm going to finish on scarce comfort. There's scarce comfort on the TV screen. There's scarce comfort in the daily print. There's scarce comfort on the radio, and half the world is skint. There's scarce comfort in the surgery. There's scarce comfort on the phone. There's scarce comfort in no appointments for those suffering alone. But there's scarce comfort from our nightmares. There's scarce comfort when we wake. But I get comfort from people who bend but do not break. And on that, I'll shut up.
No, great. Yeah. So when you come and visit us in September, you are coming up as the poet storyteller. So I hope you're going to bring some poets with you as well.
Yeah, I like, for those, I like to do a sort of mixture of poems and stories, if that's okay with you, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, Baden.
Sorry, Mike, can I just interrupt and tell all of you that we had snow in Johannesburg 2 weeks ago for the first time in 12 years. Just to tell Despina, I'll send you some coldness.
Yeah, we've had rain for 24 hours just to make you feel a little bit better. You know, we can't do snow, but we're doing rain at the moment pretty well. Baden, it's lovely to see you again.
It's ruined the cricket. Hi everybody. Yeah, I've been keeping a low profile, mainly because John Rowe has been dragging me all around the country to gigs here, there, and everywhere, and I haven't been paid for a single one. God.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah,
and
that's
I spoke to Ross the other day, and he's getting Warwick out the way, and he's going to contact. Well, he's going to look at everything next week. But
yeah.
Warwick must. Yeah, Warwick's next week. Warwick is a folk festival, fellas. That it's in the ancient town of. It's the town of Warwickshire.
Okay, I don't trust him anymore. And in fact, the lawyers that are involved.
Well, you're going to get loads of nectar points. Don't worry about it. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Despina, lovely to see you.
You know, the IOUs are on very expensive paper.
Lovely to see you, Despina, and you, Rona. And Diana, I need to talk to you about a story and work out whether it was you that I got it from. But at the moment, I'm on a run of Brer Rabbit stories, courtesy of a book that I've got. And with your permission, I'd love to change the tempo and tell you a Brer Rabbit story. Is that okay with everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I see lots of nodding heads.
It doesn't have to be okay with everybody. It just has to be okay with me, and everything's okay with me.
Lovely. Thank you, Mike. So one of the things that I really love about the Brer Rabbit stories is the interchangeability between them and Anansi's stories, which I love and which I love telling. But this particular one is a proper Brer Rabbit story. Are we short on time or are we good? We're good on time. So
we're very good on time. Don't worry.
okay, so Brer Rabbit and Brer Wolf are having a talk, and Brer Wolf is saying to Brer Rabbit, look, you know, it's ridiculous. We need water, but to get the water, we have to go down the hill, across the vale, through the forest, to where the stream runs. And then we fill our buckets and we come back through the forest, across the vale, back up the hill. And we're doing this every day. It's you know, it's driving me crazy. And Brer Wolf, because that's the kind of person he is, has worked out that if they sink a well hole deep enough, they can actually have their own well right on their doorstep. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of digging, and then they've got to kind of like fill in the sides and all of that. But he's worked out that they can have a well where they can just rig up a pulley and the bucket, and they can have fresh, clear, cold, clean water right there on their own doorstep. Brer Rabbit's not interested, not in the least bit interested, because that involves the 4 letters of the word that he hates the most. W-O-R-K, work. And he says, nah. And Brer Wolf is, why? Come on. And he explains yet again why it would be a good idea. And Brer Rabbit turns on and says to him, look, if I need water, and Brer Rabbit is a complete BS artist, if I need water, all I have to do is go and sip the dew of a blade of grass first thing in the morning. And that will give me all the water that I need for the day. And Brer Wolf is like, really? And Brer Rabbit says yes. But Brer Wolf is committed to this idea and this project. So he goes, and for 7 days and 7 nights, he digs and digs and digs and digs. And he sinks a well, and he reinforces the sides, and he creates the well, and he sets up the pulley and the bucket. And Brer Wolf has got his well, and he lowers the bucket down, and he raises it on the pulley, and he's got all the water that he needs. And of course, Brer Rabbit comes around and he has a look and he says, well done, Brer Wolf. And Brer Wolf says, yeah, but you're not getting any. And don't even think about coming around and asking me, because that's it, you're out of here. But Brer Rabbit, being Brer Rabbit, you know, mischievous, troublesome, he decides he's going to help himself to Brer Wolf's water, which is what he does. And every night, Brer Wolf pulls up a bucket of water and puts it on his veranda. And every morning he comes out and he looks and his water's gone. And he knows Brer Rabbit is stealing his water, but he can't prove it. He sits up at night with his, watching the well, and then he gets tired, he falls asleep. So he never catches him until one night it rains. And the next morning when Brer Wolf goes outside, he sees footprints in the mud around the well. And he says, aha, you brute, I've got you. I know it's you. But he doesn't go and challenge him directly, you know. Oh, no, 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 no. He goes and he makes himself a tar baby. Now I know what you're thinking. What's a tar baby? Well, it's what it says. He gets a whole load of tar and he creates something that looks like a human person, a doll. And he dresses the doll in a pinafore dress. It looks like a little girl. And the next morning, along comes Brer Rabbit, ready to go and steal some more of Brer Wolf's water. But as he walks past the tar baby, as we do where I'm from, and maybe from where you come as well, you are polite to people. And as an adult, you see a young child or, you know, an adult person and you say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And where I'm from, and I suppose where you're from as well, the custom is that you respond. So Brer Rabbit walks past the little girl, as he thinks she is, and he says, good evening. Of course, the tar baby doesn't respond. And Brer Rabbit turns around. And I don't know how it works where you're from, but where I'm from, when an adult talks to a younger person, that younger person is supposed to respond politely, answer older people. It's a sign of respect. Of course, the tar baby doesn't react. And Brer Rabbit turns around and he's like, eh, what? You don't have any manners? Your parents didn't bring you up properly? And where I'm from, I don't know what it's like where you come from, everybody's involved in the upbringing of a child. So you don't tolerate that kind of behavior. So he walks over to this young child, as he thinks she is, and he says, excuse me, you didn't hear that I said to you, good evening? And she doesn't respond. And now Brer Rabbit is vexed. And he turns to her and he says, look, I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to talk to you again. And if you don't respond, I'm going to give you a good slap in your face. And he turns around and he says, good evening. She doesn't respond. And he lifts his left hand. Are you looking at my left hand or my right hand? He lifts his left hand and he gives her a good clap, blap. And of course, his left hand sticks to the tar baby. And he says, what? Not only do you not have any manners, but you think you can grab my hand? You think that's gonna, listen, that left hand was lightning. My right hand is thunder. Let go my hand, otherwise I'm gonna give you another clap good. And of course the tar baby doesn't respond, so he lifts his right hand and he brings it across and he goes blap, and his right hand sticks to the tar baby and he says, you think because you're holding my hands I can't do anything? You forget I have 2 good feet. And he draws back his left foot and he gives her a kick, and of course his left foot sticks. And he said, you really think you're tough? Watch this. Lightning, thunder, brimstone, and fire. And he draws back his right foot and he kicks. And of course, his right foot sticks. And he's stuck there to the tar baby. And he looks the tar baby right in her face and he says, what you don't know is I have one other weapon available. Lightning, thunder, brimstone fire and watch hurricane come down. And he tries to headbutt the tar baby. And there is Brer Rabbit stuck completely to the tar baby. At that point, Brer Wolf comes out and he says, yes, I've got you. I knew it was you who was stealing my water. You know what? I'm gonna deal with you. I'm gonna, yes, I'm gonna, I'm gonna get rid of you. And Brer Wolf says to Brer Rabbit, I'm going to drown you. I'm going to throw you down the well and drown you. And Brer Rabbit says, thank you, Brer Wolf. Please throw me down the well and drown me, because that will be a quick death. At least you're not going to throw me into the briar patch. The briar patch is like the thorny bush at the side of the road. And Brer Wolf says, no, I'm not going to do that. Then he says, no, I'm not going to throw you down the well. I'm not going to drown you. That's too quick. That's too easy. I'm going to build a fire and I'm going to throw you in the fire. I'm going to burn you up. And Brer Rabbit says, yes, thank God for that. At least you're not going to throw me in the briar patch, because if you throw me in the fire, it's going to burn me up. It's going to get rid of me. It'll be quick. It'll be painful, but it'll be quick. And then Brer Wolf thinks to himself, hold on a minute. Why doesn't Brer Rabbit want to go into the briar patch? And he asks him. And Brer Rabbit says, because in the briar patch, all those thorns and sharp edges, they'll cut my fur. They'll rip through my body. They'll make me bleed. It'll be a slow and a painful death. So please throw me in the well, build a fire, throw me in the fire. But whatever you do, do not throw me in the briar patch. And Brer Wolf says, that's exactly where you're going to go. And he picks up Brer Rabbit by his ears and throws him in the briar patch. And as soon as Brer Rabbit lands in the briar patch, he says, you stupid fool. The briar patch is where I was born. It's where my father was born. It's where my father's father was born. I know this briar patch like the back of my hand. And he takes off through the briar patch and disappears. And that is how, yet again, Brer Rabbit got the better of Brer Wolf. Thank you.
And they call him Briar Rabbit or Brer Rabbit. Yes, absolutely.
Brer Rabbit.
Yeah. So you're collecting those stories now?
I've got a set of them, and there's a couple of them that I'm working on interchanging with Anansi stories, because the characters are practically interchangeable. And I've actually tested it. And told,
I've probably got a couple. Whether you've heard them or not, I don't know, Baden. But when we get into company again and we're telling stories, are you coming up to Bromyard this year?
I hope so.
Maybe I'll have a think about it, because I've got a couple of those you might be interested in. They come from the Welsh Marsh here. So one's in the Welsh language.
And Brer Rabbit, of course, comes from the same, because it's a jackrabbit, which means it's a hare.
In America, it all started with that conversation with
So it's and the tricksters, a spider and hare in Africa, a spider, hare, and wild dog, aren't they? So so some of but there's Brer Rabbit stories from some of the French colonies as well. Some of the French
it's our friend. What's her name? The American storyteller, the Native American.
Oh, which one?
No. The Native. I struggle with names.
Gail Ross or
Gail. Yeah.
Gail Ross. Gail Ross.
Who actually told me about maybe how the interface between African Americans and Native Americans came about, and possibly where that crossover took place or might have taken place.
It definitely happened in the dance where the clog dancers from the north of England met the people from the Caribbean, and they invented step dancing, the quick dancing, not step dancing. What do you call it? You mix the clog and the speed of the Caribbean, and it came together.
Yeah.
And it was in the I can't think of the name. It was the tap dancing.
Okay.
Tap dancing. There's a wonderful video of some tap dancers meeting some of the clog dancers, and it is so amusing. It's unbelievable, all the stuff they get up to. Yeah.
Will Gaines, who was a great tap dancer in the Harlem Renaissance, spent the end of his life in Southend, of all places.
Wow.
And so he came to Colchester Arts Centre. Well, of course, everyone came to have a workshop with Will Gaines, but of course he just sat there and he had his assistant do the actual workshop. So everyone left disappointed. But in the dressing room earlier, my son had sat with him. My son and Will had sat on one side in a chair, and Asa had sat in the other. And he was just showing in the steps, and so Asa got the workshop from Will.
Wow!
From the back.
Yeah. I've seen some amazing footage with Will Gaines, and I love that.
Oh, it's amazing! I met him a couple of times. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Fantastic stories of.
John, if you're going, do you know Sam Sherry and May Cheadle?
No.
So Sam Sherry was the guy from Lancashire who collected all there's 7 steps, and he knew all 7 of them. And even Mel Barber now, who runs Whitby Folk Week, and May Cheadle, they only know 6.
Hey, Despina, how are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because
anyways,
these guys, that's it. They're gonna be chatting
away. Yeah, we could be talking about this couple of years. Right, you are quite right to stop me, Baden, because I can. Mike Faculty, I know you're there. You have emailed me to say that you don't want to do anything tonight. It's just lovely to be in your company again, and thank you for listening. I think we've come to an end, so John and I can have a talk about step dancing and tap dancing and all that things, while you fellas can all go and do what you want to do.
So I'll announce what's coming up.
Yes, go on then.
So on Tuesday, of course, we've got our international young tellers at 5 o'clock in the evening, UK, Moroccan and Irish time. And then on Friday, David Heathfield has introduced to us 2 new storytellers, Georgia Pieri from Cyprus and Evie Cari. I can't
that
read
must
my
be
writing.
Evie Caridi. Yeah, I know the girl. She's Greek. Evie Caridi.
Yeah, she's. I was going to say she's Greek. Yes. So Evie Caridi. So she's on. They're doing a double header on Friday at 6 o'clock in the evening. So that's going to be that. So these are 2 people that have never been on the cafe before. So that'd be great to have some new people. And so that's fantastic. Meanwhile, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Mike, for running this.
Well, just before we finish, I've got one question for a couple of you. John, did you get the leaflets we sent down to you?
I have indeed.
Right. Baden, can we send you some leaflets so you can sort of leave them around places you go storytelling?
Yes, please. Where am I unmuted? Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, can you stick your address up in the chat, and I'll keep this open long enough so I
email,
can write it down. And I'll send or email me. Have you got my email?
Postal address.
Yeah, it's a postal address.
Okay, I'm doing it now.
Brilliant. Okay, Rona, Despina, I know there's no point in me leaving you left in the middle. Rona, could we send you some leaflets so you can sort of leave them around anywhere you go? Oh, are you in Italy? When are you back over in the UK? You're on mute, my friend. You're on mute.
I'm not back until September.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So,
well,
don't know when it's for.
We'll catch up. So, John, so we're not doing August, but we are doing we're doing 2 in September and 2 in October again as we're going through, or?
Yeah. Well, we're doing, I think we'll do one. Did we say we were doing one in August at all?
I think we're
Or were we going to give it? Hold on, let me. I wrote down our conversation somewhere. July, August. No, we decided to leave it for August, and we could
Yeah.
start again in September, couldn't we?
yes.
Should we start again Should we start again in September and bring it back to every 2 weeks?
Yeah, and
And,
we'll have
and
a conversation about some dates. I'm just writing down SW2 for LY. I'm just getting that now. Yes, if we're gonna- we'll
and
put
I've
some-
noticed that. Have I missed Sue tonight, or didn't she want to tell?
No, she never wants. She does tell sometimes, but most of the time she likes to listen.
I assumed you had it all under control, Mike, and you would have been talking to her, but
No, we have. It's the wonder of the internet and WhatsApp, Instagram, Thread, all these things that we have. But don't worry about chat. Yes,
right.
but no worry. Yes, I think. Does anybody want to do something that they haven't done yet? Has everybody done something already? So
Right. I
that's
think
what
everyone's done
normally-
something.
Yeah, Mike, I just want to, you were talking about Brer Rabbit, and I just want to tell Baden to do some research on the folk tales from Malawi, because that's where our naughty hare comes from. His mate was the hyena, and he played tricks on hyena, but you'll find some very interesting research published on the Malawian hare trickster stories.
That's brilliant. I've sent you a message with my email address,
Yeah.
and yeah, send me a link or
Okay,
some
will
information,
do.
please. I'd love to follow that up. Yeah.
Okay, will
Absolutely.
do.
Okay.
Baden, I think you need to visit Malawi. I think you
Yes.
need to
I
go there.
would.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's
and-
no way. If I can't see the Wrekin Hill or the Welsh Mountains, I'm not going anywhere. John Rowe doesn't know how bloody exceptional it was that I went over to Marrakesh. But
I
you
have
need
some
to go to
idea. I
Malawi.
shared a room with you.
Okay, look. Okay,
Well,
guys.
we actually,
And Baden, also, there's a lot of hair stories from Zimbabwe.
Okay, I'm gonna put my email address in the chat, and
Yeah.
please, guys, hook me up. Yeah.
well, I'll tell you what, if it's Zimbabwe, I know a bit more about, because it is, Sue, you're going to laugh at this, but I was given a property in Bulawayo. Right, yeah.
Okay.
The people that gave it to me left Zimbabwe and never went back, but they did give me one. You're muted still, Sue, if you're talking. So we've got Baden Pinch at Hotmail. I think I must have that, Baden. But Zimbabwe is a good place for you to go hunting stories about trickster tales and trickster stories. I know a couple. I don't know where they came from. They might well have come from that area and come back over to here, but I'll have a think about them and I'll get back to you. Okay?
Lovely. Thank you. The
Absolutely.
Spina looking wonderful as ever. Nice to
Absolutely.
see you.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Thank you, dear.
Nice
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
back. Nice to be
Right.
here.
So I'll see you all. If I don't see you in person, I'm going to see you all in September, and I'm going to miss you all because I enjoy doing all this. This is
So Waleed, thank you for flying the magic
Yeah.
carpet.
Excellent.
absolutely, Wally.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Okay, fellas.
Take care.
Good night. Good
Bye.
night,
Night,
everybody. I'm going to
Take
leave.
care, all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
See you, Rona. Take care.
Yeah. Did you see my message in the chat?
I did. I did.
I am distraught.
Oh,
Anyway, I think I can fix it. I just hope that she wasn't shattered by it. I think Diana does tend to go off. You know, she doesn't always say, right, I'm going now, bye-bye.
yeah.
So, but the way I've worded it, I think I can save it. And at least I wasn't, you know, I didn't say anything nasty. And she didn't see your message. She only saw my reply.
It happens. She'd probably gone anyway. Good to see you.
And you. And you.
Yeah. Lovely to
Take
hear
care.
you as always.
I might get you on my headliners, which you won't know anything about at the moment. It's been going for about 5 weeks, but I'll send you a wee message about that. So see, if you're so busy, I know.
Well, the problem is, Rona, my real problem is that I've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
That's the big problem. But by this time next year, that'll hopefully not be the case anymore.
Yeah. What do you do? What kind of work do you do?
I work for a North London local authority. We provide vulnerable adults with pendant alarms so they can call for help if they've got problems.
Oh, yeah.
And I do the initial screening of the referrals that come in, and I talk to them or their families about what we do and how it might help them, and
That's good.
sign them up if they, want to say,
Well, yeah.
yeah, I enjoy